Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Dion Watson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Angela Davies, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape.
We're going to start today's episode off a little bit differently with a warning, as today's episode contains discussions of domestic abuse, coercive control, serious violence, grooming, and abuse of power, which some of our listeners may find distressing. Domestic abuse doesn't always end when the relationship ends, and for many survivors, escaping the abuse is only the beginning of a long journey through police investigations, court proceedings, appeals, and the challenge, of course, of rebuilding a life afterwards. And today's guest is Maria Tume. After enduring years of domestic abuse, Maria survived a brutal attack that left her with life-changing injuries and required major facial reconstruction surgery. As she tried to rebuild her life and protect her daughter, she also experienced failures within the justice system that left her feeling unheard and unprotected. But this isn't just a story about surviving the abuse itself, it's about what came after, the system Maria trusted to protect her, and the ways it didn't always show up for her, including from people who were supposed to be on her side. Today, Maria joins us to share her story of survival, courage, and resilience, and to talk about why protecting victims means so much more than securing a conviction. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. Let's see how it goes. Just before we dive into your story, we do want to share some facts about domestic violence, as we feel it's really important that we acknowledge the actual scale of this problem. Of course, Dee and I worked with domestic abuse victims quite a lot in the police, but when we were doing a bit of research for this show, even we found the statistics quite staggering. From 24 to 25, ending in March 25, there was an estimated 3.8 million people in England and Wales that experienced domestic abuse. That's 2.2 million women and 1.5 million men. And since the age of 16, it's roughly 1 in 4 of us. And less than 1 in 5 victims actually ever report it to the police. Of those that do and who get as far as court, most survivors have already tried to leave more than once, and Safe Lives found most high-risk victims attempt to leave 2 or 3 times in the year before they get help that actually works. And some research puts the average number of attempts over a whole relationship much higher than that even. And it's said that the moment they do leave is often the most dangerous point of all, with nearly 4 in 10 women killed by an ex-partner within the first month of separation. Those statistics really are quite, like we said, staggering and horrifying. And Maria's story sits inside of all of that. Unfortunately, she is here today to tell her story. So to get us started, Maria, could you maybe tell us how you met your ex-partner and how that relationship began?
Yeah, so we're going back about 15, 16 years now. And we met through a friend, actually. And I knew of him. I was aware of him. He was actually a doorman. And he was there where I used to go dancing, to have fun with my friends. And yeah, my friend introduced us properly one evening. And it kind of went from there. We'd go on dates, the usual things you do.
Yeah.
And that's basically how we met. And he told me that his wife had been cheating on him and he had 3 children. And I thought, oh, this is terrible, the poor man, because he was very gentle man. And I'd come through a divorce. I had a teenage daughter. So there was a connection there with the fact we were both parents,
Yeah.
So that was kind of good for me to be with somebody who had children. And yeah, and it just rolled on from there. Everything happened quite quickly, really, from the dating point to him sort of moving in with me.
So it was quite a nice relationship in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there were things that concerned me a bit. He'd disappear and I wouldn't be able to get hold of him, which I wasn't used to. Normally in a relationship, you are present and correct, so to speak. And he could disappear for a week at a time and there'd be no contact. And I just didn't really pay much attention to it. Thought to myself, maybe I'm being a bit needy
Yeah.
here. And I kind of just got used to that. And he was from a different culture from me. So I kind of thought, oh, well, maybe that's their way, this laid back, come say, come sa. So I was, even then, I used to find myself questioning me more than what he was up to. So constantly thinking, oh, Maria, you're being extra needy here.
We often do that to ourselves, don't we? When something doesn't sit right or feel right, we start looking at ourselves rather than what's actually
100%,
going on. Yeah.
100%. 100%. And he would remind me at times, so, I had things to do, places to go, people to see. I'm a very busy man. He was a very busy man with no money. And I suppose looking back, that should have been a bit of a red flag. But I mean, back then, it wasn't really discussed. It wasn't really spoken about.
Yeah. Do you remember when it started to become abusive?
Yeah, I do. I do. He'd been working, and I was attending the club that he was working at as a doorman. And I was with my friend, as I would have been any Friday night. And I had a really nice evening. And we came home, and I think I was making, I don't know, crumpets or something like that. And he just flipped. And we were in the kitchen. I had a galley kitchen, and he started coming towards me. I'm trying to work out, what had I said? What had I done that had made him flip? He was just so angry. And I was walking back. I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but I ended up standing in the cat litter tray because there was nowhere else to go. And the litter tray was on the floor at the back wall. And then I think he kind of like realised what was happening, and he just stopped, and it was all very normalised again and minimised. And I knew something was wrong. I knew I'd never had that before. Nobody had ever put me in a bloody litter tray. But because he was acting so normal afterwards, like it was nothing, I just dismissed it, girls. I just, put it down to me. Maybe I didn't understand these things.
Questioning
And I,
again, what did you say to
yeah,
set him off? Or
what had I done? What had I done? I was cooking him something to eat. He'd been working. It was late. It was in the early hours of the morning. What had I done that had triggered him? Because it was never his fault.
Like you said before, I think that is one of the things that is in common with a lot of victims. You do, like we mentioned before, start looking at what have I done and kind of almost finding a justification for it in yourself, thinking you're to blame for the way they're reacting towards you.
Yeah, yeah. I remember another incident. We were coming back from the club because I go with him every Friday. He'd do his thing, I'd do my thing. But we were coming back, and again he was really angry. I don't know whether it was something I was wearing or who I'd spoken to, or because I'm quite a friendly, chatty person. I'm known for that. This night, again, the flip, and he just absolutely pushed me into the stairwell of the car. I was so frightened. I wet my knickers, and I just was so scared because I didn't know what was going to happen next. And then he pulled me back up onto the passenger seat, and it was like, done.
nothing
Whatever
had happened
anger
again.
was in him, nothing was ever spoken about. We never spoke about this. I came in and obviously changed myself, but the humiliation was there. It started, and again, what should have been a nice night out for me had turned into a traumatic experience.
That must have
And
been terrifying.
it was. And I mean, I just loved dancing, and I'd missed out on that, being married and raising a child. I'd missed out on that kind of what normal teenagers would have been up to. So it was lovely for me after the divorce to experience the joy of going out and dancing again, having fun, and just the innocence of it all, really.
How long was it into the relationship when that first incident happened?
That would have been about 3 months in, and then so it was very gradual.
Yeah.
And then 6 months in, again, we'd all been out. There was a crowd of us, and I could see him blatantly chatting up this woman, and he was giving her his phone number. Well, of course, I questioned it.
Of
Why would you do
course.
that? You're out with me. And he literally dragged me into the toilets, and he gave me the biggest slap round the face. And I just,
Wow.
you go into a bit of shock, don't you? And I
Yeah.
just couldn't work out.
What?
And then he was crying, he was on his knees, he was literally holding me, he was down on the floor in the he didn't do it out in the toilets, he took me into a cubicle. So we were rammed in here and he was kneeling down and I was, I'm comforting him. I mean, the madness now looking back, but at the time, I just felt this need to comfort him because he had lashed out at me.
It's almost like he's lashed out at you and harmed you, but then turned himself into the victim to
Yeah.
look for
Yeah,
that empathy and sympathy from you.
yeah. And of course, we must remember I'm a lot of years on now. I've done a lot of educating myself about perpetrators. And it's one of the classic things they do. They will minimize. So it doesn't matter how bad it is, they're going to make out like it's nothing. And of course, as
Yeah.
a victim, I was in total chaos and confusion. And that's how I would describe my time with him: chaotic and confusing.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised though when you've got some really nice parts to it, and then he's just flipping, and you can't figure out what it is exactly that's triggering him. And then after he's done these awful things to you, he's then turning himself into, as we say, the victim and minimizing it and crying and looking for your support after he's harmed you.
Yeah. And of course, add into the mix that by now I'd met his children. I think that's partly why I stayed as well. I'd fallen in love with his kids. They were beautiful children. And we were kind of, as you'd know it now, a blended family. My daughter
Yeah.
really loved them as well. There were some fun times with the kids. There was a lot of times he'd leave me with them and go off. The time with the children were good times. We'd all cook together. Their mother was always grateful because she always said when she knew when they'd been with me and my daughter because they came home clean. I'd wash their clothes and I could see where she was coming from. She'd send them off in the old rags in the hope that he might purchase some clothes for them, you know?
Yeah. Be it,
That should have been a red flag that he wasn't supporting his ex-wife and the children. But again, dismissed it. There'd always be an excuse as to why he wasn't supporting his family, you
and
know.
sometimes when you're in the midst of it though, you don't always see those red flags, do you?
No,
Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
yeah, absolutely, you've got it. I wasn't educated enough. I don't mean at school. I mean just in these matters. We're not taught at school about
No.
domestic abuse and about matters that are important. You know, we're taught algebra and stuff like this, which I can honestly say I've never used in all my adult life. But it would have been rather helpful back then had I been perhaps made aware of these matters.
And I think that's one of the important things about having these sort of conversations so openly and honestly, because, like you say, when you're in it, it's very hard to recognize. But if you hear from other people the things that they've seen and the things that potentially now they realize are red flags, I think that helps raise that awareness. So I think it is really important to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the violence just continued. He blacked my eye once, and we were due to go to a family party of his, and he'd blacked my eye on the Friday. And on the Saturday, he rocked up expecting me to go to this family party with a great big black eye. And of course, I couldn't. And he
No.
was like, it's hard to put across how he minimized everything. So what I saw as being something not okay, within 10 minutes, he'd convinced me it was perfectly fine. And that somewhere along the line, it was my fault. I wasn't this, I wasn't that, wasn't understanding. You know, so you're constantly living on edge and on high alert. I had a friend at the time, and he'd done a tour of duty in Iraq. And I remember we sat down and he was discussing how it had made him feel and how he felt in the aftermath, you know, coming back into Civvy Street. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking he could be describing me because I was
Really?
constantly on high alert, you know, constantly trying to I mean, my daughter was a teenager doing teenage things, but I'd try and stop her from doing anything that might set him off. It was hell.
She's literally walking on eggshells. And at that
Oh,
point as well,
100%.
it's not just the physical abuse, but the mental abuse, him actually minimizing it, convincing you that actually this is okay or it's somehow your fault. It goes beyond physical violence at that point, doesn't it?
I'm going to be
Yeah.
really honest with you here. And I think anyone listening to this who's going through what I went through or is coming out of it will possibly agree with me. I could get over the punches, but it's what he did to me mentally. It leaves scars for life.
Yeah. And also, like you were talking there about being on eggshells and constantly being like on in fight or flight. When that trauma response gets switched on and you're constantly in fight or flight and it doesn't switch back off, that also causes a lot of trauma, doesn't it?
Oh,
Does.
well, and I was always ill. I started having things wrong with me. I developed acid reflux. And I'm convinced a lot of what happened to me physically was a byproduct of what I was going through mentally with him. I developed IBS, things I'd never had in my life. And I was only young. I was only in my 30s at this time. I developed sciatica.
All these
You know,
physical
Yeah.
symptoms coming out
all
of you because of the stress and the trauma.
Yeah, oh, it's crazy, crazy. I look back and it's like I'm talking to you about a different woman.
Because you're quite a distance away from it now. And like you say, you've been through a lot and you've done a lot of work on this stuff. But it still takes a lot to come and tell your story and share it and come onto the podcast. So we do really appreciate you
We do.
doing this and also being so candid.
I know you do.
How long were you in the relationship for in the end?
4 years.
Oh, that's a really long
Well,
time, isn't it? When you're living in chaos. And
yeah,
It
well, it
is.
felt like 40, I can tell you.
what was the final straw that made you leave?
Again, we were coming home. I can't remember where we'd been, but we were coming home and we went past a bus stop and there was a girl there and she was just sobbing her heart out. And it was a cold night. And I said to him, stop the car. He said, no, leave her, leave her. And I said, no, 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 not in that state. And I think it was 2 a.m. And we got out and I said to her, do you want to lift home? And she was saying no. And I said, you're freezing cold. And I gave her my jacket. And I had to leave there because she didn't want any help. And she said, I'm okay. And I got back in the car. We drove off. He pulled the car into a side road and he beat me again. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. And I had a daughter and I didn't want this to be how my story ended. And I didn't want my daughter thinking that this was acceptable and that this is how men treat women. And in that moment, I think a light bulb went on in my head.
Yeah.
And I thought it's got to end. So that's what I did. We came home. I don't know where I found the courage. He was really calm, and that was scary because he was so calm.
So calm.
Yeah.
And I just tried to explain to him, I can't do this anymore. I can't have my daughter around this. You're not going to change. Maybe I'm not the right person for you. So again, I just kept blaming myself because I wanted out. I wanted out. I'd had enough. I mean, I'm giving you a snapshot of 4 years of my life. Yeah, and he seemed to be agreeable to it. I even helped him pack his stuff. And I thought I thought everything was going to be okay.
And he actually left the house.
Yeah, I mean, it was my house. There was nowhere for me to run to. I owned the property. And I had a really good friend at the time as well. And he was really helpful. He was trying to help me see it doesn't have to be that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I was I know it sounds bonkers, ladies. You only if you live with it would you understand it. But in a way, with all my messed up thinking, I thought the other guy was my knight in shining armor. Do you know what I mean? And I found myself gravitating towards him, talking to him a lot and really being comforted and understood. And we laughed a lot, which I hadn't done in 4 years. So just to explain what happened, I left the abusive relationship, and the friendship with my friend became more than that, and we started seeing each other, and it was marvelous.
That's nice to hear. I suppose after you've been in that chaos and you've suffered so much abuse, to have some laughter and lightheartedness back in your life, and also somebody who was showing you, that's not right, and showing you some safety and grounding, it must have been a massive,
It was like a
relief.
miracle, really. I mean, given the situation now, well, I wouldn't be in that situation, but given my time again, I think I should have absolutely taken some time out, ladies. I should have done some healing, whatever you want to call it. But I was so grateful to be laughing again and to be having fun. And, we would do normal things. We'd go to dinner, we'd go to the cinema. It wasn't all about the nightclub scene, which of course is where my perpetrator, much of his life was. It was in that scene. So it was lovely to be doing, normal stuff again. And I was happy.
It sounds like night and day, actually, from what you'd been going
Yes.
through and experiencing to what.
100%. And to be respected was marvellous. I will always thank him for that time.
After the relationship ended and you'd moved on, did you have much contact with your ex at that point?
No, I'd blocked him from being able to contact me, and my daughter was doing her exams. So there was a lot going on. We were just trying to sort of regroup, me and my daughter, and make sense of it all as best we could. And so there was no contact, nothing for about 2 weeks. I just assumed he'd moved on.
Yeah.
He actually came back at some point and seriously assaulted you, and your partner, which we're going to talk a little bit more about at the minute. But how long was it between you leaving him or him leaving the house and that serious attack taking place?
2 weeks.
It was the 2 weeks.
So I kind of fall into one of the statistics that you ladies mentioned at the beginning, within a month.
As we said in the introduction, that attack was really serious and left you with life-changing injuries and needing reconstructive surgery. Are you okay to walk us through what happened that night?
Absolutely. For us, it had been a normal Friday, watched a film, we'd had dinner, and we'd just gone to bed. I'm not really sure what time it happened, but I could hear my partner like shouting out, and I woke up and I turned round and there was just blood all over the bed, and he was covered in blood, and I couldn't work out what was going on. And I remember at the bottom of the bed was clean towels and whatnot, and I went to reach for one, still not realising what happened. And then I looked up and he was there. He was just standing in the doorway. And my brain was still trying to work out how the hell did he get in? What's going on? How badly hurt is my new partner? And what the fuck is he going to do to me?
That must have been terrifying.
It does.
Yeah, and it all happened. Some bits of it are in slow motion, and then there's other bits that all happen really quickly. I remember he just grabbed my throat and he threw me to the other side of the bed, and something in me was just saying, move your face. So if you can imagine the bottom of the divan, I just laid this way, so he could only hurt me on this side. And he was just raining blows and blows and blows. And I remember gurgling. I had blood in my throat. And then he kept kicking me and he was stomping on me. In some of the photographs of me, you can clearly see his boot print on my chest. At that stage, I didn't know how badly I was damaged. I just wanted it to end. And then he just kind of picked me up like a football. He put his foot underneath me. And I was very slim. I only weighed 7 stone at the time. And he just literally booted me to the other side of the room, and I bashed my head. And I think then I must have blacked out. And then I remember I was crawling to the bathroom. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just crawled to the bathroom and I was trying to get out what was in my mouth. And it was, of course, it was blood. It was coming everywhere. It was my eye, my nose, everything, and my fingers. He'd ripped off 2 of my nails, so my fingers, and funny enough, my fingers were hurting more than everything else. I don't know, it's strange. And then my partner, I remember him phoning the police. And we lived on a road that, if you went to the end, was the local police station. So in my madness, I've managed to get out of the house. And as luck would have it for me, a police car was coming past. And I just waved, and then I collapsed on the floor. They got out, and they got me behind the police car, because we didn't know where the perpetrator was. If he was still in the house, in the garden, he could have been anywhere. So they were trying to shield me, and they rang through for an ambulance. And I heard the police officer saying, "I think she's lost her eye." And I still, it's almost like they're talking about someone else. I've heard people talk about this. It was like I was looking down at it all. I could see
an out-of-body experience.
Yes. And again, I know this is going to sound batshit crazy, but I remember seeing my grandmother, who I was very close to, who had passed. And she simply said to me, "You can come now, or you can go back." And I said, "Well, I've got to go back because of my daughter." And the next minute, I was present on the floor again, on the pavement. And it was just the weirdest experience of my entire life. And then I was in the ambulance and I was being taken to hospital. Yeah.
I mean, the amount of strength and inner strength it must have taken for you, even though you'd been so badly injured and must have been so disoriented, to actually get out of the house and get into the street. That is rather incredible.
I think adrenaline kicks in, girls, and last bit gets you through. And because I knew there was a police station, I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but I knew there was a police station, and I knew police cars cut through that way. So I was just praying, and and then one came.
As luck would have it.
As luck would have it. I was very lucky, very lucky. They were marvellous, those police officers, marvellous. The lady officer in particular, she just was cradling me, telling me it was going to be okay.
Sometimes that's what you need to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And was he still at the scene? Do you know at that point? Did you find out later, or?
I found out later that what he'd done, he'd gone to see his ex-wife around about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he told her he'd done something very bad, and he wanted to see his children to say goodbye. And what he'd done is he'd absconded. He went to his brother's house in Scarborough, because what happened to me in Kent.
Okay.
So now he's travelled up north. Now, while this is all going on, I'm in hospital. They were so worried about me, they put me in a side room that you wouldn't even know was part of the hospital, because they had to keep me safe. You know, we didn't know what he was going to do next. I truly think he thought he'd killed me, and that's why he ran, being the coward that I now know he is.
Yeah.
He went to Scarborough, and it was 3 or 4 days later, all of a sudden, I remember the nurses were cheering, and I thought it was somebody's birthday, and then they came running in. They said they'd got him, Maria, they'd got him.
That must have been such a feeling.
Yeah.
Well, you would think, wouldn't you? You would think I would be joyful and celebrating with them. But I didn't feel any of that. I think I was numb. I was just numb.
That's not surprising.
Just didn't. I was just trying to breathe. You know, my ribs were broken. My lung had been kicked and bruised. My spleen was bruised. I had all these horrific facial injuries. I wasn't allowed to blow my nose because my nose had been broken, and straight across here and here. So they kept saying to me, "We can't operate, we can't do anything until all the swelling goes down." And that could be a while. And nobody would let me look in a mirror. And then I asked one of my friends for a mirror. This was about a week after this had happened. And I looked, I didn't even recognise myself. I mean, it was just, look, I looked like something from the Thriller video. And I'm sorry if I laugh there, but sometimes I still use humour to deflect what happens. But yeah, I looked horrific. I just couldn't believe the state of me.
You actually had to undergo major facial reconstruction surgery.
Yeah.
How many surgeries was it that you needed?
4, and it was over a period of 2 years, so it wasn't something that happened quickly. And while I've got the opportunity, can I please give a shout out to the staff at King's College Hospital in London?
Absolutely.
Maxwell facial team, they were just marvellous in rebuilding my face and making me look somewhat normal, and to all the staff at Queen Mary's Hospital in Sidcup, the nurses, the porters, everyone who looked after me.
You did a marvellous job.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't really see it unless you're close up. You can, but I've got wonky eyes. They did a marvellous job with my nose. I had a terrible bump in it before he did what he did. So they shaved everything and rebuilt everything, and they rebuilt my jaw and my chin and my cheekbones, here. And this is the eye that had all the damage. And, you know, can't really see it, can you? I mean, it's slightly bigger than this eye. And they rebuilt it. They had a marvellous plate made for me at UCH Hospital in London. And 2 years after everything is when the plate went in, and titanium plate, and it kind of lifted the eye up because it smashed the orbital floor.
Oh,
you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
They have done an amazing job.
Thank you.
And for 2 years later, you were still getting surgeries related to the attack.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably in year 3 was when appointments were starting to go to once a month. Yeah, and just learning to chew again, and I couldn't eat anything, so I was losing more weight, which I couldn't afford to lose.
that sounds like a really long road to recovery, and that's the physical injuries.
Yeah.
The physical took a long time, and I still have issues. I have arthritis in my face. I'm on medication for the rest of my life to help me with the pain. I'll always be a bit wonky-eyed, but that's not the end of the world. I can see, which is marvellous, because, at one point they thought this wasn't going to be doable, that they'd have to remove the eye.
After hearing as well the police officer on the ground at the scene saying, we think she's lost her eye, that must have...
And that was a given at hospital. I couldn't open my eye, just so out here. So I didn't know what was going to happen or how I was going to be. And so physically alone, it was a really challenging time for me and for my daughter. The first time she saw me in hospital, she had a convulsion in shock at the injuries, because of course she came in and this side looked normal, but this side was where he'd been able to hit. And I organically turned around to look at her, and she took one look, and she just, it was horrible. It was horrible.
It's such a lot for a teenager to go through as well, and seeing your mum in that place.
100%. And of course, all I wanted to do was take away her pain. She should never have had to see that. And I felt so much guilt and shame. I remember she'd be at the hospital and she'd be sitting on my bed doing her homework. It was coming up to her mocks, and I was worrying about that, how she was going to cope. I mean, she was marvellous. I mean, how that child got to where she got to, long term, the woman she's turned into, I can't be more prouder of her.
It's testament to you as well, though.
It is.
And your strength and resilience.
She has a marvellous father. And thank God, good family around her.
That's lovely to hear.
It is. We've talked quite a bit there about the physical impact that you had, and that actually you're still dealing with some of that today. What other impacts on your life did that have?
I was very frightened because I was horrified to find out he'd been given bail. So he was allowed to go and live with this brother of his in Scarborough. And obviously he had to go to a police station and sign in and whatever it is they did back then. So I had to have panic alarms put in the house. I didn't know whether there would be repercussions. In fact, his boss who employed him rang me up and said, come on, it was just a lover's tiff.
Oh
No.
my God.
I'm not kidding you. It was just a lover's tiff. You need to drop
Wow.
this. Like it was, I don't think I could have dropped it if I wanted to. I think the police were
I think
taking
they
it
would
up.
have.
They were going hell bent for prosecution. And
Wow.
I was terrified. So, I was frightened to go out. Didn't go out unless somebody was with me. I was very fortunate that the local supermarket was close by. I had some marvellous friends around us at the time. My job at the time meant I was involved with interviewing people, which would involve going to people's homes or being on the street interviewing. I was doing market research. I was terrified. And of course, I had to get back to work. There was,
Yeah.
I had to go back to work. I had to keep making sure that the bills were paid. My daughter was okay. I kept the house going. So it was me and my many jobs at the time. As quite often women do, we juggle. We're taught to juggle. So that's what I did. I just shut up and got on with it.
Wow.
Wow.
That you got back to work is amazing in itself.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it was. But
This is
I didn't have a choice, you see.
as we said, this is the thing though, sometimes, isn't it? We just don't have a choice. And as women, like you say, we're taught to put up and shut up and to juggle. Like for his boss to even call you to suggest it was just a lover's tiff and you should just get over it. I feel
But
incensed
doesn't
just
that
thinking
show you
about
the
it.
mentality? The
Yeah.
mentality that his boss, again, minimizing. But
Yeah.
remember, ladies, he was charming. If you had met him, right, you'd have think that Maria's a bloody liar. He was charming, very quietly spoken, the polar opposite to me. And he was so good at talking himself out of everything. He could tell you the sky was green with blue spots, and I'd have believed him. So I can see, I'm not excusing his boss, but it was acceptable to give your wife a slap round the face. It didn't matter that the relationship was over, that I'd made it clear I want out, it's gone.
Yeah.
That none of that mattered. They saw me as his property. That's all I was,
It's
his
disgusting.
property. I was there to look after the children, his children. I was there to feed him and wash his clothes. What he got up to outside the house, I had no right to ask or question about.
It's such an old-fashioned attitude, that, isn't it?
And
It's
it still
awful.
happens, ladies. Don't be sitting there
It
thinking,
does.
don't be sitting there thinking in 2026 that everything's rosy out there, because
No.
it's not. You were talking about stats, and I really want to make this point. Do you know, and this will horrify you, do you know there's more animal shelters in the United Kingdom than there are hostels for victims of domestic abuse and possibly their children in tow to go to?
Wow.
That's a fact.
That's unbelievable, isn't it? And you're right, at the minute as well, there seems to be the rise of misogyny again,
It
and
does.
with the whole manosphere. I don't know I don't know if you've watched that on Netflix, Maria.
Oh, Louis Theroux, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, I don't trust myself, girls, to go out there and meet another abusive person, So I do educate still. I do. I owe that to myself to keep myself aware. I was naive then, and I'm still naive now. That he hasn't knocked out of me. And I'm kind of I'm okay with that, because it still allows me to allow new friends in and make new friendships, which is so important for me. And I did watch that Louis Theroux, and you can see when Louis is interviewing them, he's like, what in the name of Elvis is going on here? You can see he's shocked by it.
But it is the entire rise of this again, as though women are property. to be owned, to be told what they can and can't do with no bodily
Do
autonomy,
you
without
watch,
a mind or to make their own decisions.
do you watch EastEnders? Because they've done a marvellous thing about it last year about this, about a young lad who's been, well, I'm going to use the word groomed, by an older man who's an influencer on social media platforms. And he's grooming all the young guys. Women are thick. Women need to shut up. Women need to stay in the kitchen and cook. Oh, but also they need to go to work and bring money in, and they need to have their babies. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous.
It's
You know,
insane.
isn't it? You couldn't make it up. And that is in 2026. It makes me mad.
I'm
Yeah,
not
it makes my blood
surprised.
boil.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
incenses me. To bring it back to your story, obviously on that night of the assault, you said the police officers at the scene were marvellous. But then, of course, as we know, an investigation begins. And actually things got a little bit trickier here for you two, didn't they? You
Oh,
were
yeah.
you were introduced to an investigating officer who was going to be in charge of your case. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your relationship with the investigating officer at first?
Well, he came in roughly about 2 weeks after this had happened. And a lot of that time was a bit of a blur. I was healing,
Yeah.
physically, but trying to heal and get back to work. So he'd come in the property and there'd be questions asked. And then I remember he gave me his mobile phone number. To be honest with you, I didn't think anything of it. I wouldn't have known. I'd never dealt with the police. I was brought up to trust police.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was told that when I was at school, you can trust the police. So I didn't know if this was normal to be given his private phone number, to be told anytime, night or day, I could text. I didn't pay much attention. He wasn't really at that time flagging up on my radar.
Yeah. You had enough
But
going
then,
on.
Yeah, you
yeah,
did.
but then, of course, he knew my daughter was at school. And of course, the police station he worked at was on that road I was telling you about. So my house was there, and he started turning up at the house. And again, I didn't know if this was what detective sergeants do. I didn't know if this was part of the job description. So I kind of went along with it. I'd make him a coffee. Then he'd started to tell me about his personal life. And I thought, is he telling me this to make me feel better, as friends do,
Yeah.
And it was like he was almost trying to become a mate. That's how I would describe it. Until one day, it all changed. I can remember it as clear as day. I was sitting down and he went to put his coffee cup in the kitchen. He came back, he stood in front of me, he unzipped his trousers, he took his penis out and he tried to put it in my mouth.
Wow.
And I was like, what the fuck is
Oh,
actually going on?
that's.
Yeah.
Saw my
I have no
reaction.
words.
No.
I can't even find the right words to do that justice. I still can't.
No.
And I
Like you
just
say,
thought,
you're trying to, that's a person that you're
I
brought
thought,
up to
I thought,
trust.
yeah, I thought, have I given the wrong signals? What have I done that's made him do that?
So you're questioning yourself again and
Oh,
thinking, what have
constantly.
I done?
Yeah, but I didn't think at the time, Dion, that it was anything to do with him.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, here we go again. I'm doing it again. And he's a police officer. And he's investigating my case and he's doing this. And I just didn't know what to do. Honest to God, I didn't know what to do. And so he stopped that day. And then he was carrying on and he kept coming back to the house and he'd tell me how attractive I looked. Now, bearing in mind, I looked like grotesque at this point. I was still healing. On the one hand, I felt, oh, somebody thinks I'm pretty, even though I know I'm not. The mirror tells me I'm not. And he was just paying me lots of compliments that I had a nice figure and that dress looks nice on you. And it was subtle. It was subtle again. And the incident of what he'd done was never discussed again. You got to remember, this was going on as we were heading towards court.
So
Yeah.
he's investigating your case and building a case for court at this point.
I can look back now and I can say to you, he'd clearly crossed a line. He would
did.
never, ever have met me had I not been in the situation I was in. Our
Yeah.
paths wouldn't have crossed. And he was using that position
Yeah. He's
To-
completely
to-
abused power.
to get something from me that I just wasn't, even if I'd met him in another time, in another place, I wasn't ready for any of that. I just was so badly hurt, so damaged. And I could sit today and cry for that woman who didn't have a fucking clue. And then the next thing, I remember another day he kissed me and I responded. And the next minute, we were having sex. And he texted me later that night. And all he said was, "Are you on the pill?" Because he hadn't
Oh.
used anything. And I said, "No." And the next day he put £25 through my door. And he just said, "Go get the
Maria.
morning after pill."
What a piece of shit.
I know. So sorry that
honestly-
happened to you. It's a complete abuse
Oh,
of power. It's
do you know,
awful.
it was such a bonkers time. I mean, oh God, this wouldn't happen now.
But the
I mean,
thing is, though, you had been abused for 4 years, not just physically, but mentally and
exactly.
emotionally. You'd managed to get out of that and then been seriously attacked and injured. Like, you could have potentially lost your life that night. You've had to undergo many surgeries to help. The building a case to go to court. This guy, is still on bail living in Scarborough. You're living in complete fear. And the police are supposed to be there to protect you.
Yeah.
You're at your most vulnerable at this point, and he's taken advantage of that and abused his power entirely. And
it was
I've got no
so well done,
words.
because then, from when this happened, there was no contact with other officers. What I think he did was he was in charge of the case. So I think he said, "Well, I'll go and deal with her. I'll go and deal with
Yeah.
her." So I wasn't seeing, there was a lovely, two lovely officers, a male and a female, and I stopped seeing them, and yet they were great. And they never came round anymore. And he gave me access perhaps to things I shouldn't have had access to. So, for example, he showed me all the photos of the crime scene, my face. He was making me feel like he could keep me safe. Don't worry, everything will be all right.
This is the thing, isn't it? While you're at your most vulnerable, and like you say, you're healing, and you've had serious facial injuries and surgery, but he's telling you how beautiful you are, even if you're not feeling it. To have somebody say that to you, to hear that when you're feeling at your worst,
Yeah.
and for it to be a police officer and him saying he can keep you safe.
It's beyond, for me, it's beyond sad. It's just so, so sad. And I just had nowhere to turn. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong at some level, but I just didn't know where to go for help. I was dealing with what had happened. I had this detective doing what he was doing, and he was completely prolific. It wasn't just me. He would tell me and quite boast about the other women that he was seeing as a result of his job. He was meeting them in the course of work. Yeah?
He's a detective
He's
who is supposed to be working with vulnerable people who've been attacked and abused.
Yeah.
And then what he's doing is grooming and abusing.
Another, a very charming man, very good looking man. And then there was me. Who's going to believe me? It was like, where do I go with this? Who's going to understand why I'd slept with him? Who's going to understand the confusion and the not knowing at that point whether he was the perpetrator was going to change his plea, because he was pleading not guilty. But strangely enough, I was told there was no DNA. His DNA wasn't in the room.
Really?
Yeah, he'd used gloves. He had things over his feet, what you call them when you go off to do what you do. The
overshoes.
Yeah, I'm calling them gloves for your feet, but you know what I mean. So he absolutely had not left any DNA. So
Wow.
I don't know how his barrister was going to convince the jury that I'd done this to myself, or that my new partner had done it to himself, or were they going to argue we'd had a lover's? I don't know. But of course, all this was going on in my head.
Yeah.
I had that worry, the worry of having to go to trial, frightened I'd cry, because obviously sometimes even now that's seen as a weakness. It's not, it's a strength, but I was scared. You know, would I break down? Would I show any emotion? You know, all these things. I didn't know how. I'd never been in this situation before. I did not know how to behave. And there was no help, no counselling, nothing.
Do you know what's happened to this officer since, professionally, at least?
No, I know that as I was pulling away, he was being transferred to another division. He got promotion. Marvellous
Wow.
for him. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just makes me absolutely sick that we
No, he
have
was,
people like that who go into those jobs to take advantage of people in vulnerable positions.
and it happens. I have no idea what happened to him. I should imagine he carried on until he was caught, if he was even caught. He was very clever. He had a younger officer, and I remember he was bringing him into things. He used to use a police car to get to clubs, you know, like we would book a cab.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
using a police car for that.
You-
See,
you
that's a
really-
sackable offence.
Is it really?
Yes. Well,
Oh, I
in
didn't
this
know
day, I
that.
suppose, how
You,
many years ago was it? It was
15.
2006, like.
yeah, that wouldn't have
From
been allowed back then.
2006, 2000, and I mean, he was still in my life up until about 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's sackable offence.
it's misuse of police resources. Like that police car could have been needed, and those police officers could have been needed elsewhere. They're not getting paid to be taxi drivers, so that's not appropriate at all.
No, but he got away with it. It was almost like it was the norm. But even I remember thinking, gosh, that's not right. You know, why
Right.
didn't you just take a normal cab?
Can I ask, Maria, did you ever report this police officer, or because of what you were saying earlier, where you were thinking who would believe me over him, did you not?
Absolutely did I not.
You didn't? Okay.
No, there was no way at that point I saw, even now, I don't trust the police.
I can see
I,
why when
I,
you've had
I
dealings
get,
like that.
may God forbid I get burgled, but I wouldn't be calling them. I'd ring a friend. I don't trust them. And there was no way I felt I could go anywhere further with that. And I just didn't feel that anyone would believe me. Who would believe me?
Sadly, I can see why you would think that. I know there is a lot of amazing police officers out there, but when
Yeah,
you as a vulnerable victim have interacted with a sergeant on that level and they've took advantage, I can completely see why you would be feeling like that. You've been abused again. It's
well,
awful.
this is interesting because when Ange and I were discussing me doing this podcast, and she used the word grooming, I read that word and I thought, what's she going on about grooming? And it was only when I spoke to another friend of mine that I thought, bloody hell, that's what it was. He groomed me because
He
he'd never
has.
have had access. He would never, ever have had access to me
No,
and my vulnerability and my trauma. And this was
no.
all before people as well.
And the scary thing with that is it sounds like he wasn't just grooming you from what you've said about he's bragged to you about other
Yeah,
victims and other women. It sounds like he is just completely abusing his power to groom multiple victims, which is abhorrent.
100%.
It's just
And
it blo-
it happens. I'm not lying to you, ladies. This
no,
happened to me and it's happened to others. And I believe it's still happening. And nobody will shake that conviction in me that it's still going on today in 2026. So that was that. That was that chapter. And then, of course, I had to prepare for what was going to be a trial.
yeah,
And at the last knock-ins, a perpetrator pleaded guilty, which saved me from having to go to trial. And the judge, I remember him saying, because I went to sentencing, and he said, and all this time, the perpetrator was out on bail, weren't in prison, weren't on remand.
On the streets, free to behave like this again.
Absolutely, do what he wants. The only one in prison was me because I was too frightened to go out. You know, I had panic
Horrendous.
buttons in, too frightened, wouldn't go to anything that was going on at my daughter's school. I used to send her dad. Anyway, went to the sentencing, and I remember the judge saying, well, thank you very much, so-and-so, you've written us this wonderful letter, but not once in it, not once do you apologise to your victims. So with that, he got quite a tough sentence. He was told he was going to serve, I think it was 12 years, and that when he came out, because he was such a danger to society, that he was going to be put on licence.
Wow.
So I'm sitting back thinking, marvellous.
Great.
For the first time in all these years, I know where you are at night. You're going to be in the cell. So I started to try and rebuild my life with my daughter. Her exams were coming up. I remember we went on holiday. I must point out for all of this, I was self-medicating with alcohol, which I've now found out is quite common. I mean, I always think it's a miracle I'm still here, because there were also, in this period of time and afterwards, 2 suicide attempts, because I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to be of any use to my daughter or to my friends or to my parents or my siblings. I just didn't know where I was in the world, so to speak. So I was carrying on as best I could, and it was about 3 years in, I took a phone call from a journalist, and she said to me, he's appealed his sentence. He's coming out on Christmas Eve.
From a journalist, did you say that?
A journalist. I mean, we had no help from anyone, myself and my daughter, nothing. I was trying to heal her up. It was very hard because I felt at the time she needed somebody outside of the family to talk to, some type of therapy, and there wasn't anything available for her, nothing. Anything I got, I'd have to pay for privately. And she was saying, oh, Mum, don't worry, we haven't got the money, da, da, da. I was on the waiting list for therapy. Back then there was something like an 18-month waiting list. And of course, after 18 months, when I got the call to say, oh, we've got a therapist for you, Maria, I just basically thought, fuck it. That's what I thought, because by then I was back at work, I was doing. Like I say, I was self-medicating. I was a very functional drinker. I was just doing my jobs. And when she went to bed, I'd start drinking, until that became a problem. So where I thought I was okay, I absolutely was not okay.
Yeah.
And this was hanging over me. And now he's going to be released. And he's got his license revoked. I was fuming. I was scared, but I was angry. And
Not surprised.
I literally put my house up on the market and we moved. Stupidly, I think I thought at that point that I was high on his list of priorities. He'd long since moved on, even in prison. But of course, I didn't really know that. And I was just thinking at the time, got to stay safe. So I moved us. And luckily, she was going to university a long way away from home. So this was marvellous.
At least feeling like at least your daughter's safe and away from the area.
Yeah. She was going to be 300 miles away, and when she came home, she could alternate between my new property and her father's, and her boyfriend's, of course. You know, she had a boyfriend. But I was angry, and in my anger, I thought, what can I do? How could this have happened? So I wrote to my local MP, expressing my views, and this was passed on to the charity Women's Aid, and at the time the Prime Minister's wife was the president. So she made contact with me, and the irony is the Commissioner of the police force made contact with me in how sorry they were that I'd slipped through the net, that we had not been kept informed of anything. I thought, you know, you've gone to appeal without me being told. And I just felt at that point my voice needed to be heard. There had to be some kind of impact statement so that I could say, well, actually, okay, we're 3 years on, but I'm still messed up. I'm still confused. I still don't know whether I'm coming or going.
Yeah.
You know,
she's been let down by the system over and over again.
Yeah, repeatedly.
So And that's what made me angry. Anyway, so they wanted the irony of what's coming next, ladies. So they wanted me to go and meet the commissioner, and I was to go and meet him with a view to being used to educate serving police officers about domestic abuse. Well, you can imagine I didn't do it.
No.
I was going to say, how did you feel about that?
I remember just thinking, what's the point? And I also remember thinking, you've missed the point here. My point is, my voice yet again, I've been
Not being
shut up.
heard.
I
Yeah.
have been shut up. Even all this time on, nobody's listening. Nobody's hearing me. And I thought, if this has happened to me, I can't be the only one that slipped through the net.
No.
You know what I mean? Which made me complain and say this isn't right. I mean, thankfully today that doesn't happen. The law has changed and victims do have a say if somebody's going to appeal.
So they do now get informed?
They get informed, as far as I know, and they get to deliver an impact statement.
So that
To
is an
say
improvement a little.
to say where they're at now. In the impact statement, they basically wrote it for me. And I remember there were certain things I couldn't talk about, which I thought was a shame because I thought it was reflective of where we were at in the aftermath.
In your impact statement, you should be able to put whatever you want.
You should.
Yeah, I wasn't. It was rewritten for me a couple of times.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Like you say, I can imagine why for you that would feel like another version of somebody silencing you, because that should be where you can be free and honest.
Be honest.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being, well, all the way down the line, I just never felt my voice was never heard, never heard.
In fairness, it sounds like it hasn't been. And also, so he was pleading not guilty right up into just before court. We know as ex-CSIs that that's not uncommon. And people do that, they plead not guilty in the hope that the person or the victim is going to drop out. And I think that this is a tactic that's used quite often, particularly in domestic violence situations or assault situations where people are really vulnerable, because you're more likely to drop out. And also, it often takes a really long time to get to court.
Yeah.
100%.
So by the time that it comes round to court, you're hoping you've kind of rebuilt a little bit. You're trying to move away from it. You don't want to relive the trauma, and people are more likely to drop out. You obviously didn't. You were still going forward with that trial. And so then he's pleaded guilty. So it did save you effectively going to court, which is in one respect a good thing. And it sounds like the judge gave him a reasonable sentence for what happened. Because also the other reason that people plead guilty, whether it's at the last minute or not, is to try and negotiate a lesser sentence.
And
oh, look, I've held my hands up.
Yeah, and I think I was fortunate with the judge I had that he saw through that apology letter and, gave him what I felt comfortable with. I felt 12 years. I knew I still had years of surgery to come and reconstructive to my face. So, yeah, 12 years I thought was a reasonable sentence.
Yeah.
So at least he got something in that instance that you were comfortable with. But then, on top of everything with the police officer already, then to appeal and you not even be informed. And then you to write to your MP and the commissioner and then say, oh, we're really sorry you slipped through the net, but will you come be an example so we can start training people? Come on.
You couldn't make it up.
You couldn't make it
up.
No.
I'm saying it was just absolute nuts. It was like a Shakespearean comedy of errors, wasn't it? You know what I mean?
Sounds like it. So how long did he actually serve in the end, Maria?
3 years.
Wow.
3?
A quarter of his sentence.
Yeah, he went into, I think it was a Cat B prison and then Cat C.
So
I
12
found
to 3.
outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, that information I got, again, it was to keep myself safe. I don't know why. I was terrified he was going to end up at Belmarsh because that was near me. So I wanted to know where he was so I could kind of, if this makes sense, keep tabs.
It makes complete sense.
Bloody
it was my only bit of control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I knew where he was that night.
I can see that.
That's exactly it, isn't it? You know you're over there in prison. I'm safe at this present moment.
Exactly that.
3 years.
It's
Can I
nothing.
believe
Oh, I'm
that?
incensed for you.
You had more than that in terms of surgery time, even. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not just that, ladies. I mean, anyone that's been a victim of domestic abuse will say, this isn't something even after 20 years you get over. There'll always be triggers. I mean, I can't bear
Absolutely.
loud noises. If you're coming to see me, I need to know exactly when you're coming. Give me a time. I drive everyone mad. Don't just randomly turn up because I'm not going to let you in. I get anxious awaiting the arrival of the Amazon man. I'll be tracking how far away they are. Normal people don't behave like that. When I go out, I don't feel safe going on my own, even now. So I go out with friends. I have a much better quality of life now. Of course I do, but I only have to look in the mirror.
it's a trauma response, isn't it? Just all about keeping you safe, which is, I think, understandable when you've been through what you have.
And I'm aware of that. I'm aware because I've taken time to, like I say, read up about all of this, talk to other survivors of domestic abuse. It's not uncommon to still have triggers, and PTSD is another diagnosis that I live with.
See, it's all these years later and you're still significantly impacted and he's walking around free.
Yeah. So
After 3
who's in?
years,
That's
You
the
have to
insulting.
argue.
injustice.
You have to argue, ladies. Who's in prison?
Yeah,
This is exactly it, isn't it? It's the absolute
Yeah.
injustice of it. And it is an
Yeah.
insult. 3 years is an insult.
it is.
Yeah.
Really is.
Talk about adding insult to injury, literally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Maria, you're so brave for coming on and
You
talking
are.
us through and sharing your experience. I think that this will really help a lot of other people out there that are suffering and going through the things that you've been through. If someone is listening today and they are living with abuse, what would you say to them?
Don't believe that the person's going to change. Don't believe that it's going to be happily ever after. If they hit you once, it's going to happen again. They're going to minimize. They're going to cause you confusion so that you doubt yourself. And I'd also say nobody's going to come along and save you. And that's the reality. You have to dig deeper. The only one that saved me was me. So you have to find some strength, be that through friends, your children, to talk about it as best you can. But don't for a second think if they've hit you once, they're going to change. And remember as well, the coercive control is often worse. I always think of a relationship now like a pair of shoes. I wouldn't go around wearing a pair of shoes that hurt me.
No, that's a
So
great
I'm not
analogy.
It
there's
is.
no way I'm going to get into a pair of shoes that's going to hurt me, and I'm not going to get into a relationship that is less than I deserve.
That's great
Love
advice. And
that.
also, I love that. It's fantastic to hear. What does life look like for you now?
You're just giving me goosebumps because if you'd have said to me 15 years ago, Maria, you'll have sold up, you'd have moved to Yorkshire where you know no one, I'd have thought you were bloody on drugs or something. But that's exactly what I did 4 years ago, and it's been the best thing I could have done. So I relocated to avoid memory triggers within the towns that I was walking in. I relocated with my little dog. We didn't know anyone. We do now. Found the courage to engage with my local community over different things. I've made friends. I've stopped drinking. I'm sober.
Amazing.
My little achievements are my biggest joy. I've given my little dog a life of happiness and freedom and walks to the sea and going in the sea. And for me, I can go round Morrison's now and not jump so much, and that's a bonus. I can interact with people a bit better now and let people into my home. I've got marvellous friends up here who've empowered me and told me all will be well.
That's really great to hear.
It is.
It sounds like you've come so far and you're now sober is incredible, because that's not an
It
easy thing
is.
to do in and of
Yeah,
itself.
and many victims won't get to that point, and I know that. And many victims won't survive. They'll commit suicide. They will kill themselves through alcohol or drugs. That is a reality. That's the uncomfortable side of the aftermath that
Yeah.
nobody wants to address. I'm addressing it because it happens.
I mean, that
Oh.
is the reality, and I think it's important that we do address the reality.
Definitely.
Yes.
And well done. You are doing amazing, and all of those achievements. It just shows how strong you are as a person.
Well, thank you for having me on. I think I'm grateful.
You think you are? Well,
Well, we're grateful.
I'm
really
grateful. I'm
grateful.
grateful that I've been able to find my voice and say this happened and do it with two very fine women. So thank you for taking care of me on here.
Thank
You're
you.
so
Thank you so
welcome.
much for coming on. And we are really grateful that you've come on and shared your story. But I think that a lot of our listeners will be. And I think that your story and your courage and your resilience and your bravery is going to be a light for many other people. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to echo everything Ange said, thank you. I do think your story is an inspiration and will help others. So thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to listen to Maria's story. We hope that you've found that interesting, and hopefully it can be a help to many people out there who are listening. And if you are enjoying what you're hearing, please remember to subscribe, give us a share with somebody else who you think might enjoy the podcast. We appreciate all of that. And we will be back in a fortnight's time where we will take you back under the barrier tape.